So welcome everyone to this YogaX Wednesday morning practice. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces and so many special faces. Gosh, who used to be in my classes many times a week for years, so thank you for showing up. It's just absolutely lovely to have you here. So for this month, and all of you by now know that I usually work with a monthly theme. And so the theme for the month of August is an exploration of the breath as it reverberates through all of our different layers of self. And so we will work with how the breath moves within the body and how the body moves the breath. So the relationship or the conversation between body and breath. Breath and energy, which of course is part of your energy body, which is also your breath body. But the kind of energy we talk about here is sort of the esoteric yoga, life force, pranic energy, but it's also the energy that's wrapped up in affect, not emotion, but affect. The idea of, do you feel good, do you feel bad, or neutral? Do you feel kind of agitated or do you feel grounded? So it's that more affective, really clear of good, neutral, bad sort of differentiation. And then the relationship of the breath with the mind. Can you use the breath to calm the mind? You know, we use yoga during times of challenge. We use yoga as a way to tap into our own resilience. And a lot of that comes through that relationship that's created between the breath, the mind, and the body. You know, the word yoga comes from yuk, which means to yoke or to tie together, to bring together. And so part of what this exploration of breath through the layers of self does is it helps us recognize the relationship between those layers and the reality that really, even though we talk about them separately, it's all one anyway. And so it gets us in touch with our integration, our union, and it is through our sense of integration and union that we can cope with challenges and deal with stressors and find our resilience. So we'll continue that exploration today. And so we'll start with a 4-part breathing breath. And my invitation to you is to find a comfortable position. You can be seated and upright. That tends to be the easiest if you want a nice big abdominal breath. But it's also really nice to be reclined. And so you could build like a little incline if you have a bolster with a couple of bricks. But if you choose to lie down today, I invite you to have something under your back. So if you have a blanket, roll it up, like take it the long way, the quarter way. We call it, you know, mountain pose of the blanket, which is this fold. And then put it down like this and then roll it up from the long edge so that you're making kind of a long roll. And I did it with my white blanket so you can see it better on my mat. And if you are lying on that, you bring the sacrum either right on top of, or the tailbone right on top of the edge of that, or if that's really uncomfortable, you could leave it off the blanket. And then you'll roll yourself onto that blanket roll with the head supported. You can bring the feet mat width apart and let the knees come together. And that's a really comfortable way of placing the body. So your choice, seated all the way on your back, on a blanket roll, or at an incline. And then once you are settled in, if the eyes want to close naturally, invite them to do so. If that doesn't feel comfortable or safe today, then you can just keep them at half mast, finding a little focal point in front of you so that the eyes have a gaze point. And then from there, I invite you to settle into your body. Feel the connections between your body and the earth. And wherever you feel the contact between your body and the floor beneath you. Imagine that you can grow roots that anchor you to the earth. Roots that connect you to the earth. Roots that ultimately connect you to one another. Allow yourself to feel a sense of grounding through those parts of you that touch the earth, so that you really can enter into a relationship with the ground underneath you. Feeling a sense of trust that you can release the body here to the best degree possible, while maintaining strength in the core if you're seated to hold yourself upright. Gently scan through your body from the ground up. And just notice if there are any places in the body that need a little wiggle or some intuitive movement to create more ease. And then invite that movement until you feel that you've reached enough release that you can settle back into physical stillness. And keeping your body in that gentle awareness of allowing it to continue to have a conversation with the earth to create some comfort. Bring your focus now, your attention to your breath. And begin in this moment by simply watching the breath without expectation, without a desire to change anything. Watching, noticing with curiosity how each inhale travels in and how each exhale travels out at this moment in time and in this place. The amazing thing about our bodies and our breath and our mind is that they're never the same moment to moment. And so there's always something new to notice. And so no matter how many times you've observed the breath, come to it yet again in this moment with a beginner's mind. Noticing perhaps where in the body you can feel the breath today. Maybe it's in the rising and falling of the abdomen. Maybe it's in the gentle expansion of the lower rib cage as you inhale and the contraction as you exhale. Maybe it's a sensation of the lower and the middle rib cage moving out and in. Maybe you notice the flow of breath as it moves cool on the inhale through the throat and warm on the exhale. Or maybe you feel the breath most easily in your nostrils. Cool air traveling in, rushing across the fine hairs in your nose. Warm air traveling out. Or maybe you feel the breath as a pulsation in your body, vibration that spreads from your center to your edges and back. Whatever emerges or becomes prominent for you, note that. And bring your curiosity to it, your open mind, your open heart. And maybe as you're watching the breath in this way, you're getting a sense of how long it takes you to inhale and how long it takes you to exhale. You could even count to get a sense of that, or you can simply be curious and get a sense rather than an accurate representation. You're just watching in this moment. And as you get a sense of the length of your inhalations and exhalations, maybe you're also beginning to notice whether the breath is deep or shallow today. Or maybe it's just in the middle and you can't even tell, is that deep or is that shallow? It's just, this is how much air is moving through you right now. Not changing anything. Not inviting any alterations or modifications in the breath. And yet noticing that sometimes the breath changes automatically when it's watched, and that's totally natural. And then maybe notice the texture of your breath, sensing if the breath catches anywhere. Noticing if there are little hitches or glitches either when you exhale or inhale. Or is the breath smooth, traveling in softly, gently, smoothly, traveling out softly, gently, smoothly. Noticing mindfully, curiously, openly. And then notice if you can sense the pauses at the top and the bottom of your breath. Where the top is that space between the inhalation and the exhalation. And the bottom is that space between the exhalation and the inhalation. Is there a pause or is there just a moment of switch over? Just be curious. When we talk about the 4-part breath, those are the additional parts. There's the inhalation, there's the pause at the top, or the crest of the breath. There's the exhalation, and there's the pause at the bottom. Just notice with curiosity what that pause is like in your breath cycle today. And notice whether the simple fact that you're observing that pause is lengthening it. That's often the case. And so even though you're not making an effort here to lengthen the pause, notice if it happens naturally. This is your moment of stillness in each breath cycle. It's also a moment of transition, it's a moment of change. And so the capacity to become mindful or attentive to that pause also helps you become mindful of the fact that there is enormous stillness in moments of transition, in moments of change, in moments of challenge. We'll take a couple more rounds of breath. For those of you who are on your backs, I invite you to gently begin a journey to a seat. Maybe rolling yourself off to the right side first, taking a breath there, and then finding your way up. And once all of us have arrived in the seat, I invite you to either place your hands on your legs or in your lap, or to bring your palms together at your heart and bow your head for a moment to your heart center. This place where often our breath is most palpable. And as you tune inward, invite an intention for your time on the mat today. This could be a simple word or a phrase, a dedication. Something that creates a bigger purpose outside of you and within for your time on the mat. Seal that intention into your own heart with an inhalation. And then send it out to your community as you exhale. And then release the hands, lift your focus, and open your eyes. And we will start our asana section with tabletop today. And if you have a blanket, you could now come into half mountain pose fold for the blanket, which is a 8 times fold, so 1 more fold than a quarter fold. You don't have to use this under the knees if you don't want to. I'm using it for sure today because I have a little bit of a knee injury in my right leg, and so this in my right knee, and so this is a nice way of supporting the knee. And then I have blocks handy here. We will have these between our legs. Specifically, you'll have 1 block between your feet or ankles. And I'm using the medium setting for that, so I'm doing it like this. And I put it between my feet and my ankles so that I can squeeze my legs in. The other block I will have, and you can make your own choice here. I will have mine at the medium setting also, to have it between my thighs, at sort of the softest part of my thighs, but not at my knees. You could also flip that on the short end. It kind of depends on how wide your hips are, what's comfortable here. And then start by just squeezing those blocks in while you're upright, like I am, to get a sense of whether that feels comfortable, and then make any adjustments in those blocks. So from here, we will drop into tabletop with the blocks between the legs. Now, the reason we have the blocks between the legs is that we will do hip opening today. And by squeezing the blocks here, you're resetting your SI joint. So if your SI joint was at all out of whack, this should actually really help feel your low back a little bit better. And so we'll move through cow and cat, still squeezing the blocks. So inhaling into cow, as we always do, and exhaling into cat. Finding nice stability in your core by drawing the pelvic floor in, drawing the belly button to the spine as you exhale. And then easing up a little bit on that as you inhale and flow into cow. And as you're taking this very gentle flow, let the breath determine how slowly or quickly you are moving through cow and cat. And then as you are flowing here through this little mini vinyasa, notice if you can recognize the union of breath and body here. That same 4-part breathing we did seated or supine a moment ago is happening now. And so as you're at the end of cow pose, can you notice the pause? And have a moment of stillness here before the exhalation needs to move breath out. And then at the top of cat, at the bottom of the breath, can you have a moment of stillness before the urge comes to inhale? Flowing with your own 4-part breath. Body and breath completely integrated. Invite the mind to become focused on this flow, concentrated on that union of body and breath. Aware of the moment of stillness at the top and the bottom. The next time you come into your cat pose, let that be the end of that flow, so that with that next movement toward inhaling, come to neutral in tabletop. And then walk the hands out in front of you a little bit more. You might want to remove the block between your thighs now, though if you have the space, you can also keep it. And then come into an almost puppy pose, but not quite. So you're coming toward the floor a little bit. Maybe the forearms are on the earth. That will relieve the pressure off the wrists for a moment. And then from this puppy orientation, walk yourself to the left, still squeezing the block between the feet, and come into a really nice side stretch for the right body. And so feel that stretch from the top of your hip bone all the way into your armpit on the right side. And sort of make this very luxurious, right? This shouldn't be like a painful stretch. It should be one of those stretches where you want to go, oh, feels so good. And as you settle into this stretch, notice what's happening with the breath. Invite the breath to stay balanced. But being open to the reality that probably the breath will flow a little bit differently in this position than it did earlier. With your next inhalation, press yourself back to center. Take a round of breath in, sort of puppy's pose here. And then with your next exhalation, walk yourself to the right side for the same stretch in the left side body. Again, feeling that stretch from the top of the hips all the way into the armpit. Still squeezing the block between your feet or your ankles to create stability in the core. To create safety in the thigh joint. And notice your breath. Perhaps gently re-regulating itself in light of the additional demand. With your next inhalation, travel back to center and release. towards child's pose. You can keep the block between the feet if that's comfortable. If not, you can remove it. And then from here, as you breathe, bring the arms next to your knees. And I will show this on the opposite side so that you can see me. But as you breathe in, lift your right arm up and open yourself up into a little twist coming out of child's pose. And then flow 2 or 3 times with your breath. Exhaling down and inhaling up with your 4-part breath. So maybe holding for that moment of stillness at the top and the bottom of the breath. Using your own breath cycle, the next time you exhale, come down and then switch sides with the inhalation. So the next inhalation, you'll open up to the other side. Moving with your 4-part breath. Inhaling into the twist, finding stillness, exhaling out. One more round with your own breath. And then the next time you've come to center, you can remove the block from your feet. Come back into tabletop. From here, we will do a little flow that I call fire hydrant. I don't actually know where I picked that up and who invented that, but it's kind of the idea of a dog lifting its leg, right? So we're gonna flow with the breath. You'll inhale, and again, I'll do the opposite so you can see better, but as you inhale the next time, you lift your right leg out to the side. I'll show it like this, actually. And then as you exhale, the leg comes down. You switch sides each time, and you're again using the 4-part breath here. So inhaling to lift, pausing to hold, exhaling to lower, pausing to come back into the moment, and so the sequence goes. Let the breath inspire the movement. And let the mind rest in those pauses at the top and the bottom of both breath and movement. One more time on each side. And then come back into tabletop, or you can come into child's pose if you need a moment's rest. And just drop back in mindfully for a moment into the experience of your body and your breath. Inviting the breath to regulate. Inviting stability in your core if that dropped out through the movement. And then step your knees wide apart. Make your legs parallel to the edges of your mat, and so you'll all be sideways like I am now. because you want mat. And so hopefully you can see my legs are parallel to the edges of my mat. My feet are flexed, so I have a 90-degree angle at my ankle. And right now I'm upright. From here though, we will drop back into our tabletop, only this time with really wide legs, shins parallel to the mat. And we're gonna flow with the breath, inhaling to come forward, almost like into a mini plank with wide legs. And then exhale and move back. And you'll notice that the movement back is a lot more challenging than the movement forward. And so just notice here what's happening in your body, your breath, and your mind as you're moving into this big hip opener called frog. Frog is a challenge for human hips, not so much a challenge for frogs. And so just notice what's happening to your human mind as you're creating this frog leg position here in your hips. It might help to really press the heels down or the inside really of your ankles. That might bring a little bit of relief. And you're moving with the breath, so it's gentle. Inhaling forward, coming away from the challenge, holding, and then exhaling with a nice long breath into the challenge. Our exhalation brings our parasympathetic nervous system on board. And so it's beautiful to find ways to exhale into the challenge, and frog pose does that for us. We inhale away, we activate, we become resilient, and then we exhale and we settle into the challenge, into the moment. And we realize there can be stillness in challenge. And by now you're probably saying, Chris, how many more of these are we going to do? This is our last one. This next time, when the hips are basically above the knees again, you can bring the feet toward each other and then drop the hips onto your feet. Close your knees and swing the legs back out in front of you. Or any way that you can come back to a seat. It doesn't have to be super elegant. Bring your hands out behind you and your fingertips will point toward your sacrum. I like to have my elbows bent here, but that's not a requirement. You could have straight arms. But for whatever reason, I like my elbows bent here. And I like to bring them a little bit toward each other. This creates stability in my shoulder girdle. And then find engagement in your core here as you lift the right foot up first. And then you bring it across to let it come to rest just above the left knee. And then the right foot hooks around the left knee, like this. And now, not using a hand or anything, but just using your core strength, press the right knee away from the body. Frog's pose prepared you pretty well for this lovely hip opening move. Make sure that the foot really is hooked around the opposite knee and that you're kind of pressing your toes toward the knee. If it doesn't make contact, that's fine. I just want activation in your ankle here. That protects the knee joint. And it brings the opening into the hip instead of torquing the knee. So it's kind of important to have activation in the foot here. And then let go of that side. Maybe make a little circle with the ankle before you release the foot back down. And we'll switch sides. First, inhaling the leg up, and then bringing it across. And with the exhalation, nice hook around the other leg. I'll switch sides so you can see. Curl that foot around the knee to the best of your ability. And you can also keep the knee lower, right? It doesn't have to be so extreme. Wherever your body can do this, it could even be with the leg all the way on the ground. Of course, I'm doing that a little late. I should have done that on the first side. Activate the toes into the knee and press left knee away from the body. Feel the opening in the hips without torquing the knee. And take a nice round of breath here. With your next inhalation, release the foot away from the knee. Maybe make some circles with the ankle. And then bring the foot down. You don't have to switch sides. I'm only doing that for demo. And then grab your blocks again. Bring them to the top of your mat. Come back into tabletop. And then bring the hands to the blocks. Step your right foot forward so that it's on the inside of the right block. Place your hand on the left block. I just moved it so you could see what I'm doing. And then curl the back toes under and press yourself up if that feels comfortable. You can also stay here. There's nothing magical about lifting the knee. It's just a little extra work. So just make a conscious decision about what's right for your body today. And so now you're in a lunge pose. And what we're doing in this lunge is we're going to take the hips and we will move them out to the right side so that we're almost opening up a little bit to the left. So you will feel this as a nice stretch in the adductors, the inside muscles of your right thigh. And you'll feel it as a nice hip opening in both legs. If the heel of the back foot wants to touch down, it can. And so you're just feeling a really nice stretching here in this lunge. And then you'll come back to center and step the right foot back. Again, you can be on the knees if you prefer, totally okay. And then step the left foot forward. You'll take the same action to the other side. So now your hips pivot to the left and you're opening yourself up to the right. If the right heel wants to touch to the ground, absolutely allow it to. If you're on the knee might pivot open a little bit. And so it's a nice stretch now in the left adductors. It's a beautiful hip opening here. Always staying connected to your breath. Inhale yourself back into the lunge. And then switch sides again using your preferred method, coming to the knees or stepping forward or stepping back. And then once again, bring the right foot forward, only this time, take your block, walk the foot out to the edge of the mat, and place the block to the inside of the foot. And then have your hands on the other, and you can, on the other block, and you can be on your knees or you can be with knees lifted. And then sink down, I'll actually show this over here, into lizard pose. So now we're moving through the amphibian world today, I guess. We went from frog and now we're coming into lizard. You can touch the back knee down and put that foot flat on the ground if you want. It's a big hip opening. Maybe it's actually easier to see if I come into it like this. So you can see that my knee is pointing in the same direction as my feet, or my feet are pointing in the same direction as my knee. That keeps my knee safe, and it opens my hip rather than torquing my knee. Now from here, we will add a little hamstring slide, a sideways hamstring slide, where we're going to straighten the leg. And you can see what my hips are doing. My left hip is now popping out or out to the side. And then I come back forward into lizard. Sometimes we floss our shoulder joints. You remember that? I think we did it last week. Today we're sort of flossing our hip joints. We're creating a lot of movement here in various directions. This will look very different for all of us because our hip joints are pretty unique. The little opening that your bone sits in, your femur bone, your thigh bone, can be very deep for some of us, or it's really shallow for others. If you have a really deep socket, your movement here will be a lot smaller than if you have a relatively shallow socket, and that's anatomy. There's nothing that we're going to change about that. All right, and then step back with the knee, and we'll switch sides. Starting with lizard. Releasing in to the opening, making sure the foot, the toes are pointing in the same direction on the left side as the knee. Maybe inviting a nice open heart, and stay connected to the breath. Exhaling into the challenge, so maybe pulsing deeper into the lizard pose as you exhale, and releasing out a little bit as you inhale, if that feels okay for you. And then add the hamstring slide. Drawing the hips back. And forth. Flossing your hip joints here. Flowing with the breath. Inhaling, opening the heart. Exhaling, opening the challenge. You'll feel like little Gumbies today at the end of practice. And then let that movement come to stillness. Walk yourself around, but you're reoriented, facing the top of your mat. And once again, come to tabletop. This time in tabletop, walk your hands 1 hand's length forward so that the wrists are no longer entirely under the shoulders, and then drop the hips back, curl the toes under, and really press those toes into the ground, almost like we did when we hooked the foot around the knee. And then press into the hands a lot so that the hips almost naturally want to pop up into a down dog. You can pedal your heels out for a moment. You're pretty warmed up for this. You're pretty prepared for this. But the lower legs might feel a little tight. And so just gently walk them out. And then with your inhalation, lift the right leg behind you so that you're making a straight line from the fingertips to the heels. You're flexing your foot. And then from this position, rotate the foot out. So you're making an external rotation in the thigh bone, opening the hips. And then bring that leg even higher and maybe drop the foot down on the other side. We call this wild thing. It's a big hip opener in dog pose. Take a breath here. Notice what's happening to the breath. And invite the mind to stay focused on the breath. Next time you inhale, bring the leg high. Re-rotate that femur so it's facing down. And then bring the right knee to the right wrist. And the left foot under the left hip. I mean, the right foot under the left hip. That would be really tough. To come into a pigeon preparation pose. Now your hips are likely floating off the ground here. And if they are, you could take a block or a blanket to ground the right hip down onto a blanket. Or if your hips can reach the ground, let them touch down. But there's nothing like special about being able to open the hips or the groins so much that the hips can, the bum can come to the floor. So if you need to sit on a blanket, feel free. And then feel the opening in the front of the body here as you inhale. And appreciate that incredible openness in your hips here as you press the toes of your right foot yet again into the ground. So there's always that activation to protect the knee and to bring the opening into the hip joint rather than the knee joint. Then from here, with an inhalation, lift the hips back up, press into the hands, move toward a tabletop. Reassemble yourself here. You could even take a flow of cow and cat if you need to, or you could shake out your wrists if they're feeling a little sensitive before we do the other side. And then when you're ready, you can start again by placing one hand forward and then the other hand forward, pressing into the pads of the fingers rather than collapsing into the wrist. Bring the hips back, curl the toes under, and then press into that forward portion of the hand and lift yourself up into down dog. Just because you know where you're headed doesn't really mean that you should go faster. So keep moving with the breath. Feeling your inhalations, your pauses, your exhalations, your pauses. And then with your next inhalation, lift the left leg behind you. Make a nice long line from the hands to the heel. And then gently begin to outwardly rotate the foot and the thigh. Big hip opening here. Lift the leg higher, bend the knee, and drop it behind you. Maybe notice what the breath is doing here. And see if you can exhale into the challenge. Using your breath to reground both body and mind. The next time you inhale, straighten the leg, roll it down, and then step the left knee to the left wrist and the left foot under the right hip. and drop toward the floor. Maybe the hip releases all the way to the ground. Maybe you're grabbing a blanket and bringing it under your left side of your feet. Press into this beautiful variation of pigeon pose. And enjoy the opening in your hips here. You're releasing long stored emotions, potentially. They live in our hips. Some people say it's mostly our anger that lives there, but I think it's really more than that. Sometimes it's our fear, our challenge. And so if you feel sort of a sense of emotional challenge here, just be with it. Maybe exhale into it a little bit more deeply and accept it. One or two more full breaths here. Inhaling your heart open and exhaling into your resilience. And then move your left hand out to the side so that you can bring your left hip to the floor, lean a little bit to the left, and swing the right foot in front of you so that you're now basically in the seat. And then from here, you have your choice of rolling onto your back. You can use your hands to walk yourself down, or you can roll down using your core one vertebra at a time. All the way down to the floor. I should have cued this, but you'll need a brick. We won't use it right at this moment, but you'll need it in a moment. And then once again, we'll take a figure four, just like we did seated upright earlier. Now you're lifting the right foot, you're taking it across and to the outside of the left knee and press the knee away from the body, wrapping that foot around the left knee and pressing into the toes. Short hold here, one breath. With your next inhalation, release and switch sides. Left foot comes up, wraps around to the right knee, toes pressing into the right knee or toward the right knee. If they don't touch, that's fine. One round of breath. And then with your next inhalation, unhook that foot, bring the foot down, grab your block, and place it between your legs, like so. So it's not right on the knee joint, but it touches the thighs and it touches the shins, like this. And then drag the legs toward each other so that the whole leg is pressing into the block. You're not moving the knees inward, the whole leg is dragging in. And so you should feel this in the outside edge of your foot, and the inside edge of your foot should almost be floating in the air. You're really just pressing that brick with your legs, or rolled up towel or blanket or whatever you have that you're squeezing here. This resets your SI joint just in case the big hip openings tweaked anything there. And then take the block and switch it to the middle setting and do the same thing one more time. You're just going to open the feet a little wider. And then you're going to squeeze that brick again with the whole leg drawing in, dragging in, so that you feel it in the outside edges of your feet. And then this time, keep squeezing that block with your legs and lift the hips up as you inhale and drop them down as you exhale. Doesn't have to be a huge lift. And just keep doing that, maybe 3 or 4 times. with your breath. You could even close your eyes here and start to retune into the 4-part breath. Pausing the body as you pause the breath. And then the next time you exhale, keep the hips grounded. Take your block away. And then if you'd like, come into a happy baby, and maybe your little 4-month-old Arlo can join us here in a little happy baby pose. And then any free movement that you would like to make before you settle yourself into Shavasana. Maybe some knee circles or some windshield wipers or a little bit of supine twisting. Whatever sort of intuitively wants to emerge from your body before it settles into stillness. So I'm running a little bit over today. If some of you need to sign off, please do take a little bit of Shavasana before you leave, but feel free to leave early if you need to, and my apologies. And as you settle yourself into your final resting position, check in with your body and notice what you might like here to feel settled. Maybe a blanket under the head to make sure that the forehead is higher than the chin. Maybe a rolled blanket or even a rolled mat under your knees. Maybe you even just need a few wiggles or movements to settle the body into the earth. And once your body feels grounded, surrender the weight, the tangible presence of your physical body to the earth, to gravity. Inviting the body to let go of any unnecessary holding or gripping. Yielding into the present moment. And now invite the breath to breathe itself. Even though we paid attention to it for the last hour, it does not need your attention in this moment. You can surrender the breath, the movement of energy through you, to the flow of the greater life force through this universe. Allowing yourself to be breathed. Yielding the breath to this moment. And then invite the mind to follow the example of the body and the breath, to release into stillness. Knowing the occasional thought or memory might pop in, and yet not latching onto it. Simply letting it come and go. Surrendering the mind to your own greater wisdom. Inviting the mind as well to yield to the present moment. And from this place of surrender, move into a few moments or minutes of stillness. And if you have the space in your morning to stay in Shavasana for a few more minutes, I invite you to do that. Otherwise, begin to gently wiggle your body awake, allowing the world to re-enter your awareness through your senses, maybe noticing sounds and scents around you. Maybe even blinking the eyes open to allow visual stimuli back into your awareness. And as the body reawakens, perhaps take a nice, deep, deliberate breath in and out. To reawaken yourself to your own breathing. And then before you move anywhere, invite your mind to plot the journey for your body and your breath, first to your right side and ultimately to a seat. And then once you've imagined that journey, gently begin to do it for real, rolling to your right when you're ready, and arriving in a seat. I invite you to ground your palms on your legs or in your lap, or bring them together at your heart. Bow your head to heart center. And tune once again into this amazing reality of your body, your breath, your mind, your wisdom, your connection to community. All these layers that are you are connected, integrated within you and outside of you. Your breath links you to everything. Breathe into that realization. Maybe reconnecting to the intention that you set earlier today. Thank you so much, as always, for practicing with me. It's an honor, a pleasure, and a joy. Take good care. Thank you.